Hello, students. For this week's philosophy appetizer, I get to revisit and get back in touch with my roots as a biochemist. So let's talk biochemistry.
The topic of our talk is changing DNA. Here are pictures of Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier. They just received the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the discovery and application of a technology that's called CRISPR-Cas9. If you want to know more about it, I'm going to put a slide here and you can copy this link here to this YouTube video that will show you how the technology works. But to make a long story short, it was discovered as a system of immunity in bacteria, and the enzymes that the bacterium use have been essentially used to introduce modifications into DNA. The idea is that you could be able to go into the DNA of a cell and identify specific target genes and modify them very specifically without all of the side effects and issues that were present with previous DNA modification technologies. The discovery happened around 2013, and in 2015, the MIT Technology Review came up with this article called Engineering the Perfect Baby by Antonio Regalado. And let me share with you a little bit about that article and my thoughts regarding this.
So here is a little excerpt from the article that I was mentioning here. The author is visiting the lab of George Church at Harvard Medical School, and he's talking to a postdoc named Luhan Yang. And he asks the questions: can any of this be done to human beings? Can we improve the human gene pool? The position of much of mainstream science has been that such meddling would be unsafe, irresponsible, and even impossible. But Yang, the scientist he's interviewing, didn't hesitate. Yes, of course, she said. In fact, the Harvard laboratory had a project underway to determine how it could be achieved. She flipped open her laptop to a PowerPoint slide titled Germline Editing Meeting. Now, when they say germline, that means, of course, the uh, egg and sperm, which combine to form the embryo. And the idea is, can you edit the DNA of these cells or the embryo itself in order to correct diseased genes and pass those genetic fixes on to future generations? Now, so thus far, the debate about the ability to modify DNA is revolving around the idea that you could go in and correct genetically transmitted diseases, which sounds noble all in itself. But what the article continues to explore is other possibilities, perhaps more controversial. The idea that you could deliberately modify human embryos or human germlines in order to produce what they call super babies. In other words, in order to pre-charge the genetic information of human beings in order to produce more quote unquote intelligent, more quote unquote athletic, and of course, quote unquote better looking individuals as adults. And that is where the controversy lies.
Well, it turns out that at a conference in 2018, this scientist, He Jiankui, and I probably am pronouncing that incorrectly, from the Southern University of Science and Technology in China, announced that he had been able to modify the DNA of embryos of twins and produce essentially the first genetically modified human beings from this CRISPR technology. The scientific community rose in disapproval. Number one, for the lack of transparency of the research, and secondly, for the lack of consultation with other parties to ensure that the procedures were carried in an ethically approved manner. Later on in 2019, Dr. Jian Kui was sentenced to jail for the situation and also fined a large amount of money by the Chinese government. But all that aside, the point is that the technology was utilized to modify germline materials, in other words, human embryos, and they produce viable human beings. And so the future is here.
So there you have it, students, a big controversy for the future. As I've often said, you are the generation that will probably build a society in which my grandchildren are going to live. And so I want you to be informed of some of the things that might happen in the future. Maybe perhaps not too far away, because you will have to shape the policies and the guidelines that will govern these technologies. And I want to make sure you do a good job for my grandkids, okay? In a future discussion, we'll probably have a chance to talk more about this, and I want to hear what you have to say about it. Would it be right for human beings to intervene into the genetic material of, let's say, sperms and eggs and embryos in order to produce humans that have pre-selected abilities? Or should we just limit this to correcting genetic diseases and perhaps gaining one more victory against illness in our world? I hope you get a chance to think about this. Thank you so much.